At Starbound, we tell stories the human way, not with artificial voices or AI slop. In the end, what's HFY without humanity? Subscribe to keep it this way. My name's GeneralG. Let's begin. The spaceships belonging to the Galactic Council's correctional units were never known for their comfort. But Cax's situation today was particularly miserable. He'd been shoved into the middle seat between an enormous Krivac and an equally massive Vizil, both criminals, like himself, on their way to experience Earth firsthand. The planet had a reputation for correcting unlawful behavior better than any prison. At least, that was what they say when they threatened to send you there permanently after one more crime. Cax stood barely 4 feet tall, his deep blue skin, nearly cobalt, covered with hundreds of small black dots arranged in patterns unique to his genetic line. His large yellow eyes, expressive and constantly darting around to assess his surroundings, were the only thing about him that seemed remotely intimidating. And even that was a stretch. He was a zealot, a species known for their intelligence and their unfortunate lack of physical prowess. 2 hearts beat rapidly in his chest, one for each lung system, pumping blood faster than usual as anxiety crept through him. To his left sat Itib, the Krivac who seemed determined to take up as much space as physically possible. The creature was massive, with pristine white fur that would have been beautiful if it weren't attached to such an insufferable personality. His red nose sat prominently on his snout, and when he yawned, which he did frequently and without covering his mouth, Cax could see rows of yellowed fangs and sharp canines that could easily tear through bone. Itib was only a bit bigger than the average human, but his low-density build from being born on a low-gravity world meant he was all fur and muscle, stretched over a deceptively light frame. Still, when his fur bristled, he could look nearly twice his actual size. On Cax's other side sat Alil, a Vizil whose black scales looked like charcoal. His vertical pupils were fixed straight ahead, and his long tail swished behind him, occasionally smacking against Cax's leg. Between these 2 mountains of alien muscle and attitude, Cax felt like a piece of space debris caught between 2 asteroid fields. Insignificant and liable to be crushed at any moment. Every time either of them shifted, he was squeezed further into his seat, his small frame offering no resistance whatsoever. He'd tried to claim the armrests early on, but Itib had simply placed his massive forearm over both, and Cax had decided that his continued survival was more important than comfort. "So," Alil said, "Earth, the so-called death world that's supposed to make us all behave like frightened younglings." Itib snorted, a sound that reminded Cax uncomfortably of an impending avalanche. "Overrated propaganda. Yeah, the gravity is heavier than most civilized worlds, and yes, apparently everything on the planet is trying to kill everything else, but that's exactly why I'm not worried." He flexed one massive arm, causing his fur to ripple. "Let 'em try. I come from a warrior culture. My ancestors conquered 3 moons before your species even discovered fire." "Your ancestors," Cax said quietly, "had the good sense not to commit crimes that got them sent to Earth." Itib's head swiveled toward him, and Cax felt his 2 hearts skip a synchronized beat. "What was that? Little blue spot?" "Nothing, just thinking out loud." Alil's tail swished faster. "I don't think it's overrated exactly," he said, his vertical pupils narrowing as he spoke. "The statistics don't lie. Recidivism rates for the average criminal who visit Earth drop to nearly 0. But I think the key word there is average, weak-minded individuals. I, on the other hand, am strong enough to handle whatever this mudball throws at me without any problem. Physical dominance is natural. It's in my blood, my bones, my scales." Cax resisted the urge to massage his temples. Did it ever occur to either of you that perhaps the reason the statistics are so effective is because you're wrong?
Wrong about what?
Itib leaned closer, and Cax caught a whiff of something that smelled like wet fur and old meat. About everything. About being able to handle it. About physical strength being enough. Look, I know I'm small. I know I'm weak. I've made my living using my brain because my body has always been useless in any kind of confrontation. But I've also made it a point to research things that might kill me. And Earth? He paused, choosing his words carefully. Earth is something different entirely. Different how? Alil asked, seeming genuinely curious despite his earlier confidence. Different in that it's not just one thing that might kill you, it's everything, simultaneously, and constantly. The humans evolved there, which means they evolved to survive in conditions that would kill most of us. They're not stronger than you, Itib, and they might not have scales like yours, Alil, but they have something else. They survive in this planet. That changes how they think. Itib laughed, a booming sound that made several other passengers turn to look. You're afraid of humans? Humans? Those soft, furless, scaleless creatures that don't even have natural weapons? I've seen the vids. They're pathetic looking. That's exactly my point, Cax said, his voice rising before he caught himself and lowered it again. They look pathetic. They should be easy prey, but they're not. Doesn't that make you wonder why? Philosophy from a financial fraud, Itib scoffed. How touching. At least I'm smart enough to be worried, Cax muttered, knowing he'd lost this argument before it began. Alil's tail slowed to a thoughtful sway. Even if you're right, what do you think they're actually going to do to us? We're here for the equivalent of forced community service. We learn whatever lesson they want us to, and then we go home. Simple. If it were simple, Cax said, the recidivism rate would be higher than 0. Before either of them could respond, the ship's intercom spoke. Attention, passengers! We will be beginning our descent through Earth's atmosphere shortly. A human officer from the Earth Correctional Education Program will be moving through the cabin to conduct preliminary interviews. Please cooperate fully. The announcement ended, and a murmur rippled through the cabin. Cax felt his heart's rate increase again. This was it. They were actually going to Earth. Preliminary interviews, Itib mimicked in a mocking tone. Probably some bureaucratic nonsense. Fill out this form, sign here, promise to be good. I've been through a dozen of these. On Earth? Cax asked. Well, no, but then maybe you should take it seriously. The ship began to shudder slightly as it hit the outer edges of Earth's atmosphere. Through the small window across the aisle, Cax could see the blackness of space beginning to give way to a lighter blue. The planet was below them now, close enough to feel real rather than theoretical. A door at the far end of the cabin opened, and a human stepped through. Cax's first thought was that humans looked even stranger in person than they did in the vids. The man was tall by Cax's standards. Most species were, but not exceptionally so compared to Itib or Alil. He wore a dark blue uniform with patches on the shoulders that Cax couldn't quite read from this distance. His skin was a medium brown, his hair dark and cut short, and his face had that peculiar combination of hardness and mobility that human faces seem to possess. Unlike most species, where you could tell mood from stance or scent or the position of scales or fur, humans broadcast their emotions through dozens of tiny muscles in their faces. It was disconcerting. The human began working his way down the aisle, stopping at each row of seats. Cax watched as he crouched down to speak with a small meepick in the front row. His voice too quiet to hear, but his posture relaxed and non-threatening. "What is your name?" the human asked the meepick. "Zix," the meepick squeaked. "My crime was I stole some food. Just a little. I was hungry." "I see," the human said, making a note on a datapad. "Thank you for your honesty, Zix." He moved to the next row, where a Thraxian with orange skin sat hunched over. Name and crime. "Paula. I I was caught smuggling exotic plants. They weren't dangerous. They were just rare, and I thought I could make some credits selling them." "Thank you, Paula." The human moved through the cabin, and Cax noted that his demeanor remained consistently calm and polite, regardless of what crime was confessed. A Yulian admitted to vandalism. A Korok confessed to illegal gambling operations. A Sixar acknowledged hacking into government systems. With each row, the human came closer, and Cax felt his anxiety building. He'd prepared what he was going to say, how he was going to present his case. He'd done nothing violent, nothing that hurt anyone directly. Surely that would count for something. Finally, the human reached their row. "Good afternoon," the human said, his voice level and professional. "My name is Liam. I'm going to be your primary education coordinator during your time on Earth. I need to ask each of you about the crime that led you to choosing this program." He turned to Itib first, perhaps because the Krivak was closest to the aisle. "Let's start with you. Name and crime, please." Itib stared at Liam for a long moment, his yellow fangs visible as his mouth curled into something that might have been a smile on a creature with different facial structure. "What? Sorry, I can't hear you. Speak up." Cax closed his eyes briefly. "Oh no." Liam's expression didn't change. "I said I need your name and the crime that brought you here today." Itib laughed, loud and deliberately obnoxious. "Oh, I heard you that time. Funny how that works." He leaned back in his seat, making himself larger. "You want to know my crime, human? My crime was having an interspecies affair with your mother. She was very accommodating." The cabin went silent. Even the ship's engines seemed to quiet for a moment. Cax watched Liam's face carefully and saw something strange happen. The human's expression shifted, not to anger, which Cax had expected, but to something else, something that looked almost like satisfaction, though that made no sense given what had just been said. "I see," Liam said slowly, his voice perfectly calm. "I'll remember your name. It's Itib. Not that you'll be able to do anything about it." "Itib," Liam repeated, making a note on his datapad. "Thank you for your cooperation." He turned to Cax next. "And you?" "Cax," he said quickly, eager to distance himself from Itib's stupidity. "My name is Cax. My crime was I might have done some creative financial maneuvering for a company I worked for. Multiple companies, actually. I got caught." He paused, then added, "I'm sorry for it. I am. I knew it was wrong." Something in Liam's expression softened slightly. "Thank you, Cax. I appreciate your honesty and cooperation." The human then turned to Alil, and Cax felt a sinking sensation in his two hearts. He could see Alil's tail swishing faster, could read the set of the Vizil's shoulders. "Name and crime?" Liam asked. "Alil," the Vizil said, and Cax could hear the pride in his voice. "My crime was the same as Itib's. Your mother is very popular across the galaxy." Liam's face did that thing again, that strange shift that wasn't quite anger but wasn't happiness either. He sighed, a very human sound that seemed to carry more weight than it should. "What did I do to deserve these two?" he muttered, though it seemed to be directed at the universe rather than anyone specific. He made another deliberate note on his datapad, his stylus moving with exaggerated care. "Alil and Itib. Got it." He moved on to the rest of the cabin, but Cax noticed that he glanced back at their row twice, and neither time did his expression suggest anything good. The descent continued, and Cax felt the ship beginning to level out. They must be through the worst of the atmospheric entry now. Through the window, he could see clouds. Earth was getting closer with every second. 20 minutes later, the ship settled. There was a collective exhale from the passengers, and then the sound of restraints being released. Cax started to undo his own restraint, but before he could finish, Liam's voice came over the intercom. "Attention, passengers. Normally, we begin the Earth experience with a slow introduction to the planet's gravity. allowing your bodies to adjust gradually over several hours. However, thanks to our two special friends in row 12, Itib and Alil, today we're going to skip that slow introduction and do something more educational. Cax's hands froze on his restraint. Special friends did not sound good. Educational sounded even worse. Please remain seated, Liam continued, and now there was a hint of something in his voice that made Cax's skin prickle. In 3, 2, 1. There was a mechanical click, and suddenly Cax felt like someone had dropped a mountain on top of him. Earth's gravity hit at once. Cax gasped, his two hearts hammering as his body suddenly weighed nearly twice what it normally did. His bones felt like they were being compressed, his muscles straining just to keep him upright in his seat. But then he noticed something else. While he was struggling, he wasn't struggling as much as he'd feared. His small size, his light weight, they actually helped. The gravity was crushing, yes, but he had less mass for it to crush. Itib, on the other hand, was clearly suffering. The Krivak's pristine white fur had flattened against his body, and his massive frame was hunched forward, his muscles visibly straining just to keep himself in his seat. His breathing had become labored, each inhale a visible effort. Alil wasn't faring much better. The Vizil's scales seemed duller, somehow, and his tail had gone completely still. Not from calm, Cax suspected, but because he couldn't spare the energy to move it. His vertical pupils had widened, and his claws were gripping the armrests hard enough to leave marks. Around the cabin, similar scenes were playing out. A threep across the aisle had slumped completely forward, wheezing. The meepick from the front row was making small whimpering sounds. The Thraxian's orange skin had taken on a grayish tinge. I'm fine, Itib growled, though his voice lacked its earlier booming quality. This is nothing. Completely manageable, Alil hissed, though he hadn't moved since the gravity had activated. Of course it is, Cax muttered, though he knew they couldn't hear him over their own labored breathing. Minutes passed, long, heavy minutes where simply existing felt like exercise. Cax focused on breathing steadily. He'd read that panic increased oxygen consumption, and right now, every breath felt precious. Gradually, it got easier. His body was adapting, or at least learning to cope. Around him, others were having similar experiences. The threep had managed to sit back up. The meepick had stopped whimpering. Even Itib and Alil seemed to be adjusting. All right, Liam's voice came through the intercom again. If everyone's ready, we're going to begin disembarking. Take your time. Move slowly. Your bodies are still adjusting. The cabin door opened and Cax watched as Liam entered, looking completely unbothered by the gravity that was still making everyone else miserable. Everyone up, he said. Come on, we've got a schedule to keep. Cax unbuckled his restraint and stood, swaying but managing to stay upright. His small size was definitely an advantage here. He had less of himself to keep balanced. Around him, others were struggling more. The meepick needed help from Liam to even get out of the seat. Itib hauled himself up with visible effort, his fur still flat against his body. I'm fine, he announced to no one in particular. Completely fine. Obviously, Cax said under his breath. Alil rose more slowly, his tail dragging on the floor behind him. His vertical pupils were still dilated, and Cax noticed his claws had left actual gouges in the armrests. This way, Liam said, gesturing toward the exit. Welcome to Earth. They shuffled toward the door, a motley collection of aliens who'd all committed minor crimes and thought they were tough enough to handle whatever some backwater death world could throw at them. Cax was already starting to suspect they'd all been very, very wrong. The door opened onto a ramp, and beyond that, "Oh," Cax heard himself say. It wasn't a city. There were no buildings, no landing pads, no climate-controlled domes or artificial structures of any kind. Instead, there were trees. The ground was covered in vegetation, various shades of green and brown, and in the distance he could see what looked like rock formations jutting up from the earth. "Welcome to Australia," Liam said. "Specifically, a forest region that we find particularly educational for visitors like yourselves." "A forest," Itib said flatly. "You brought us to a forest." "Not just any forest," Liam replied, and that strange smile was back on his face. "This forest is home to some of the most interesting wildlife on Earth. Which brings me to my next point." He turned to face the group fully, and his expression became serious. "Everything here can kill you, and I mean everything. The spiders, the snakes, the plants, the insects, the mammals, the birds. If it exists in this forest, assume it's lethal until proven otherwise." He began walking along the line of aliens, his eyes scanning each of them. When he reached Itib and Alil, he paused, his gaze lingering. "The funnel web spider, for instance, is about this big." He held his fingers apart to show a space about 2 inches wide. "And its venom can kill a human in 15 minutes if untreated. For species not from Earth, the time is usually shorter. They're aggressive, too. They don't run away, they attack." He took a step closer to Itib, looking up at the massive Krivak. "Then there are the taipans, snakes with enough venom in one bite to kill several dozen humans. They're fast, too, faster than you'd think something without legs could move." Another step, this time toward Alil. "Crocodiles in the waterways that can reach over 20 feet long and have a bite force of several thousand pounds per square inch. They're ambush predators. You won't see them until it's too late." He stepped back, addressing the group again. "Cassowaries, birds that look ridiculous until they kick you with their foot-long claws and disembowel you. Drop bears? No, actually, those are a joke. Mostly, but the point stands. This environment is hostile. And here's the important part. If you commit any crimes while you're here, if you cause any trouble, if you decide you want to continue your criminal careers, you won't get sent back to your home planets. You'll get sent to prison here, on Earth, in Australia, possibly in this very forest." The group had gone very quiet. Even Itib's fur had bristled slightly, though whether from fear or anger, Cax couldn't tell. "Now," Liam said, his tone shifting to something almost cheerful, "let's begin the tour. We've prepared backpacks for everyone. Food, water, basic supplies. We'll be hiking to several observation points where you'll get to see Earth's wildlife up close. Should be fun." He moved to a cargo container that had been unloaded from the ship and began distributing backpacks. Cax received his and found it surprisingly light, or maybe it just felt light because he was getting used to the gravity. Inside was a bottle of water, some kind of wrapped food bar, and a few other items he didn't immediately recognize. When it came time for Itib and Alil to receive their backpacks, Liam paused, rummaging through the container. "Huh," he said, his tone absolutely flat. "Looks like we ran out of the good snack bars. All that's left are, well, let's call them the nutritionally adequate but not particularly pleasant ones." He handed backpacks to both of them with a smile that showed teeth. "Sorry about that." Cax noticed that the water bottles in their packs looked identical to his own, at least. Small mercies. "All right, everyone," Liam called out. "Follow me, stay on the path, don't touch anything, and try not to die. It's a lot of paperwork when someone dies." And with that deeply reassuring statement, he set off into the forest. Cax shouldered his backpack and followed, his hearts still beating faster than normal, his legs already aching from the gravity. Behind him, he could hear Itib muttering something that sounded like creative profanity and Alil's tail dragging through the vegetation. This was going to be a very long 6 months. The forest was loud. That was Cax's first real observation as they moved away from the landing site. He'd expected quiet, maybe some wind through the leaves, but instead there was a constant symphony of sounds. Insects buzzing, birds calling, things rustling in the underbrush. Every sound made him jump, his survival instincts on high alert. Liam led them down what he claimed was a path, though Cax couldn't see much difference between it and the rest of the forest floor. The human moved confidently, his steps sure, even on the uneven ground. The aliens behind him were not faring as well. "Keep up," Liam called back cheerfully. "It's only a 2-kilometer hike to our first stop." 2 kilometers. On any other planet, that would have been nothing. Here, with Earth's gravity pressing down on them, every step feeling like they were walking uphill, it felt like a marathon. Cax was managing, but just barely. His legs burned, his 2 hearts were working overtime, and sweat, he was actually sweating, which Zalitz rarely did, was beginning to form on his skin. But again, his small size was helping. He had less body to move, less mass to push forward. Idib was suffering visibly, breathing fast. Alil was doing a bit better than Idib, his reptilian biology giving him some advantage, but his tail was still dragging, and Cax could see the strain in how slowly he was moving. After what felt like hours, Liam stopped. They'd reached a clearing with a large rock formation on one side. "First stop," he announced. "Everyone gather around. Carefully." The group shuffled closer, grateful for the chance to rest. Cax's legs were shaking, and he wasn't alone. Several aliens simply sat down on the ground, too exhausted to care about dignity. "Now," Liam said, pulling out a device that projected a holographic image, "let me introduce you to the eastern brown snake." The hologram showed a sleek, brown-colored serpent. "Second most venomous land snake on Earth. Fast, aggressive when threatened, and responsible for more deaths in Australia than any other snake. They like to live in areas exactly like this one." He gestured around the clearing. "They could be anywhere, under rocks, in the grass, in the trees above us. And here's the fun part. They're attracted to movement and vibration. So all that stomping around you've been doing, yeah, they know you're here." The meatpick let out a small squeak of terror. "But don't worry," Liam continued, that smile still on his face. "They usually only attack if provoked. Usually. Sometimes they're just having a bad day. Sometimes they mistake you for prey. Sometimes they just don't like your face." His eyes drifted towards Idib. "Some faces are more unlikable than others." Idib's fur bristled, but he said nothing. "Now, remember what I said earlier about committing crimes on Earth? If you end up in prison here, you might find yourself doing labor in areas like this. Clearing brush, maintaining paths, that sort of thing. In the heat, with the snakes, and the spiders, and everything else. Just something to keep in mind." He let that sink in for a moment, then clapped his hands together. "All right, on to the next stop. It's only about 3 kilometers from here." The collective groan from the group was audible. The second hike was worse than the first. The novelty of being on Earth had worn off, replaced by the reality of aching muscles and burning lungs. Cax's legs felt like they were made of lead, each step requiring a lot of effort. Around him, others were in similar or worse shape. The Thraxian was limping. The Yulian was wheezing with every breath. Even the species that should have been more physically capable were struggling. And through it all, Liam walked ahead of them with that same easy gait, occasionally stopping to wait for the group to catch up, never showing any sign of fatigue whatsoever. "You know," Cax heard himself mutter, "I'm starting to think he's doing this on purpose." "Of course he's doing it on purpose," a voice beside him said. Cax glanced over to see a Quark female keeping pace with him. "This whole thing is punishment, disguised as education. I'm Vela, by the way. Illegal gambling." "Cax, financial fraud." Smart crimes, she said approvingly. Not like those two idiots behind us. Cax risked a glance back. Itib and Alil were at the rear of the group, both looking like they might collapse at any moment, but stubbornly refusing to ask for rest. They insulted his mother, Cax explained. His, oh no, even I know you don't insult a human's mother. The second stop was near a body of water. Don't touch the water, Liam said immediately, as if reading his thoughts. Seriously, don't even think about it. He pulled out his projection device again, and this time the hologram showed a massive reptile with powerful jaws. Saltwater crocodile, largest living reptile on Earth. They can grow over 20 feet long and weigh over a ton. They're ambush predators. They can remain perfectly still for hours, waiting for prey to get close to the water. Then they strike with a bite force of over 3,000 pounds per square inch. The hologram showed the crocodile's jaws snapping shut, and Cax felt his skin prickle. They're also patient, Liam continued. If you come to the water's edge once and they miss you, they'll remember. Next time you come, they'll be ready. They've been known to stalk prey for days. He walked closer to the water's edge, and every alien instinctively took a step back. Now, if you were serving prison time here on Earth, guess what one of your jobs might be? That's right, waterway maintenance. Checking equipment, clearing debris, that sort of thing, in crocodile territory, with proper safety equipment, of course. That smile again. Usually proper safety equipment. Alil's tail had started swishing again, but now it was a rapid, anxious movement. Even Itib had gone quiet, his earlier bravado nowhere to be seen. The next stop is about 4 kilometers away, Liam announced. It's a bit of a trek, but the view is worth it. No one groaned this time. They were too tired for groaning. The third hike broke them. Cax felt it happening somewhere around the 2-kilometer mark. His legs simply stopped obeying properly, each step becoming an act of will rather than muscle memory. The me-pick had to be carried by Liam for part of the way. The Thraxian was openly crying. The Yulian had gone silent, focusing every bit of energy on just moving forward. Even Itib and Alil, those massive examples of physical prowess, were reduced to shuffling forward one agonizing step at a time. Itib's fur was completely matted now, and his red nose had somehow gone pale. Almost there, Liam called back, not even slightly winded. Just another kilometer. I can't, someone said. Cax realized it was Alil. I can't take this anymore. I need to stop. I need to rest. Itib, breathing heavily beside him, nodded. Almost can't handle it, he admitted, his words clearly costing him. Almost. Liam stopped and turned back, surveying the exhausted group. All right, he said. 10-minute break. Drink your water, eat something if you can. But then we have to keep moving. We have one more stop today, and it's the important one. The group collapsed where they stood. Cax leaned against a tree, his legs trembling, and pulled out his water bottle. The liquid was warm but tasted like salvation. Around him, others were doing the same, some also attempting the food bars from their packs. He noticed that Itib and Alil were struggling with their food bars, making faces with every bite. The nutritionally adequate but not particularly pleasant ones were apparently living up to their description. After 10 minutes that felt like 10 seconds, Liam got them moving again. The final kilometer was a blur of pain and determination. Cax's body was running on autopilot, his brain too exhausted to do anything except keep the basic functions going. Finally, they reached the third stop. It wasn't a natural formation like the previous two. This was clearly a human-made space. An open field with various structures and equipment visible in the distance. And more importantly, there were humans. Lots of them. Welcome, Liam said, to a military training facility. The field before them was alive. Humans in uniform were running, carrying weights, climbing obstacles. "What you're seeing," Liam explained, walking along the edge of the field so the group could observe, "is standard physical training for Earth's military personnel. These are regular humans, not enhanced, not genetically modified. Just humans who've trained their bodies to function at peak performance in our planet's natural environment." He pointed to a structure that looked like a wall made of smooth material. As they watched, a human ran toward it, jumped, grabbed a small protrusion, and proceeded to climb the entire thing using only their hands and feet. At the top, which had to be 30 feet up, they rang a bell and descended the other side just as quickly. "That's the confidence course," Liam said, "designed to build upper body strength and mental fortitude. Those are humans who've been training for a few months. Want to see what experienced soldiers can do?" Without waiting for an answer, he gestured to another area, where humans were engaged in what looked like combat training. Two humans were grappling. One flipped the other over their shoulder, and the thrown human rolled with the impact and was back on their feet in seconds. "Hand-to-hand combat training," Liam explained, "because even with all our technology, sometimes the most effective weapon is the human body itself. We're not particularly strong compared to many species." His eyes drifted toward Itib. "And we don't have natural armor," a glance at Alil. "But we're adaptable. We can fight in any environment, in any condition, and we don't stop." He walked them along the edge of the field, pointing out different training exercises. Humans running while wearing masks that restricted their breathing to simulate low oxygen environments. Humans doing exercises where they had to maintain perfect stillness for extended periods, building mental discipline. Humans working in teams to solve complex problems under time pressure. "Now," Liam said, stopping at a section where humans were practicing with weapons, "let's talk about marksmanship. The sound of gunfire, because that's what it was, actual projectile weapons, cracked through the air. Humans," Liam said, "are persistence predators. We evolved to chase prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. We're not fast in short bursts, but we can keep going for hours, days if necessary. We don't give up. We don't stop. We just keep coming." He let that sink in for a moment before continuing. "And we've taken that mentality and applied it to everything we do, including dealing with crime." The group had gone very, very quiet. Even the constant background sounds on the forest seemed muted. "These soldiers," Liam said, gesturing to the training field, "are among Earth's finest. They're disciplined, capable, and dedicated to protecting humanity and our allies. They represent the best of what humans can be." He paused, his expression becoming more serious. "But here's the thing you need to understand. They're not perfect. They're human, which means sometimes they make mistakes. Sometimes they make bad choices. Sometimes they commit crimes." The weight of that statement settled over the group like a physical force. When a human soldier commits a crime serious enough to warrant prison time, they get sent to military prisons. Here on Earth, some of those prisons are in environments exactly like this one. Some are worse. And sometimes alien criminals who are repeat offenders, who decide that they want to continue their life of crime, end up in those same prisons. He looked directly at Itib and Alil now. "So, if you keep your bad habits out there in the galaxy, if you continue thinking you're tough enough to do whatever you want, you might end up in a cell with humans. Humans who trained like this. Humans who chose crime. Humans who are stronger than you, more adaptable than you, and more experienced at surviving in hostile environments than you. And that's not even counting the other Death World species who also end up here." The silence that followed was absolute. Cax felt his two hearts hammering, and it had nothing to do with exertion this time. He looked at Itib, saw the Krivak's white fur bristling. He looked at Alil, saw the Vizil's vertical pupils fully dilated, his tail completely still. wouldn't want to end up here, someone said. It might have been the me-pick. It might have been Cax himself. It was hard to tell. Then don't, Liam said simply. Don't commit crimes. Don't think you're above the law. Don't assume that because you're physically imposing or particularly clever, that you can do whatever you want without consequences. That's the lesson. That's why you're here. He looked at each of them in turn, his human eyes meeting theirs one by one. Earth doesn't care how strong you are. It doesn't care what species you belong to or where you come from. If you break the law, you pay the price. And trust me, the price here is higher than you want to pay. The march back to the ship was conducted in complete silence. Even Liam seemed to sense that nothing more needed to be said. The group was too exhausted, too frightened, too mentally and physically drained to do anything except put one foot in front of the other. Cax's mind was racing despite his body's exhaustion. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw those humans training, saw their strength and discipline and absolute refusal to quit. And the thought that some of them became criminals, that some of them ended up in prison, and that he would end up sharing a cell with them. No, that wasn't going to happen. He'd learned his lesson. He'd learned it thoroughly. They were within the sight of the ship when Cax noticed Itib and Alil had dropped back from the group. He glanced back and saw them having a quiet conversation, their earlier hostility toward each other apparently forgotten in shared misery and fear. Then, to Cax's surprise, they both veered away from the path toward where Liam was walking at the front of the group. Cax slowed his pace, curious and worried in equal measure. He watched as Itib and Alil approached the human, their body language completely different from earlier. Itib's fur was flat, his posture submissive. Alil's tail was tucked close to his body, his head slightly lowered. "Liam," Itib said, and his voice had lost all of its earlier booming confidence. Can we talk to you?" Liam stopped and turned, his expression neutral. "Of course. What's on your minds?" Itib started, then seemed to struggle with the words. "We wanted to apologize for earlier, for our joke." "We were being idiots," Alil added, his hissing voice uncharacteristically quiet. "We thought we were tough. We thought we could handle anything. We were wrong." Liam studied them for a long moment, his face unreadable. Then slowly, his expression softened slightly. "I appreciate the apology. What were your actual crimes, your real ones?" Itib's ears folded back. "I was caught in an illegal fighting ring, participating, not organizing. I hurt someone pretty badly. They survived, but..." He trailed off. "I was smuggling weapons," Alil admitted. "And now?" Liam asked. "Now I know better," Itib said firmly. "I don't want to end up here. I don't want to be in a prison on Earth. I don't want to share a cell with someone who can do..." He gestured back toward the training facility. "That." "I'll do better," Alil promised. "No more smuggling. I swear it." Liam was quiet for another moment, then nodded slowly. "Apology accepted. And I hope you both mean what you say about changing your behavior. You've got 5.5 months left here on Earth. Use that time to really think about the kind of life you want to lead." "We will," they said in unison. As they rejoined the group, Cax noticed something had changed in both of them. Itib's swagger was gone, replaced by a more thoughtful demeanor. Alil's aggressive confidence had been replaced by something that looked like genuine humility. The ship came into view, and Cax had never been so happy to see a vessel in his life. The door was open, the ramp down, and he could see the climate-controlled interior waiting. They filed inside one by one, and as Cax stepped through the doorway, he felt the difference immediately. The gravity was still Earth standard, but the temperature was perfect. The air was filtered, and there were seats. Beautiful, wonderful seats! He collapsed into his, and felt his muscles begin to unclench. His two hearts gradually slowed to a more normal rhythm. Around him, other aliens were having similar experiences, the relief visible on every face. Liam stood at the front of the cabin, his expression somewhere between satisfied and sympathetic. "Get some rest," he said. "Tomorrow we'll continue the educational program. We've got a lot to cover in 6 months." The cabin was filled with groans, but they were tired groans, defeated groans. Nobody was arguing. Nobody was claiming they could handle more. Everyone had learned the same lesson today, though some had learned it harder than others. Cax closed his eyes and let his head rest against the seat. He was exhausted. He was sore. He was never, ever going to commit another crime as long as he lived. Earth had taught him well. Beside him, he heard Itib muttering to Elil. "Did you see the size of those humans when they were grappling? And they were just training. Imagine fighting one for real." "I don't want to imagine it," Elil replied. "I don't even want to think about it. I'm going to go home, find a nice legal job, and never look at anything illegal again." "Same," Itib agreed. "My fighting days are over. From now on, I'm the most law-abiding Krivak in the galaxy." Cax smiled, his eyes still closed. It seemed everyone had learned something today, and they still had 5.5 months to go. By the time they left Earth, they'd probably be the most paranoid, law-abiding group of aliens in the galaxy. And honestly, that was probably exactly the point.